Just keep staring into it.
Yeah. Okay.
Morning reason to try them. Well, I know. That happened this.
Okay. Well, grab your sandwiches. There may be a lot of sandwiches there. I don't know if there's gonna be a lot of people showing up. Okay, good idea. Okay.
We'd call you out. Look, she's not on the list.
Oh, Wendy didn't sign up. She texted me.
Wendy said that.
All right.
Really wanted it to be a salad.
I can't have the bread.
Should have ordered a sandwich without bread.
I know. That's why Wiley looked at me, she was like, oh, I'm sorry, I was like, I can take it off there.
Okay. All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? This is Dr. Allen. Dr. Allen and I have an interesting history. We went to school together at the University of Florida. And this was the first instructor I ever had in behavior analysis, and how I stayed in the field, I'll never know.
Just think how old that makes me, like,
So this goes back, we've known each other since 1978. So that's a long professional career and friendship. But Ron is from Simmons University in Boston. And he's a professor of behavioral practice.
oh, it's a professional practice.
Professional practice. So his job is to see master's and PhD level people in behavior analysis get their degrees and they want to exciting things around the country. It's good university. And
The best.
it's the best. It's up there. Anyway, the topic that we're going to be talking about, that Ron's going to be talking about today, is diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And this is a hot topic right now in behavior analysis, but this is a big topic on every college campus. This is what you're talking about. No matter what profession you're going into, this is a very big deal. It's hard to get into a university these days and not talk about these topics. So he's going to talk about it in the perspective of using it for ABA and going over some statistics of the things that we've seen in ABA over the years in terms of trends. But it's also applicable to all professions that we're starting to see these changes happen. So without further ado, I think we're recording. Everything should be good to go. Okay. It's all yours. Take it away.
Thank you, Jeff. And since I've known him for so long, if you want any funny stories about Jeff, right after the talk, we can get into those. And he'll sue me after that, but nevertheless. So as Jeff was just saying, diversity, equity, inclusion. I'm a behavior analyst, so I talk about it from a standpoint of a behavior analyst, but it really applies to any, well, all over the place, but certainly to the health and the profession, which we all belong to. And so there'll be some statistics that you see that we could say OT, we could say speech, we could say any of them, counts and stuff like that. So I'll just start here. And I have a million slides, so we may not see them all. This is an old picture, and you can't really read this too well probably, but it says the initial meeting of the Society for the Experimental Analysis of Behavior, 1948. In Bloomington, Indiana, at Indiana University. Again, this would be an important picture for behavior analysts
This guy is B.F. Skinner right here. This is his best buddy, Fred Keller. But it's hardly exactly what I'm talking about here. Yes, I'm a Skinnerian and all that sort of thing, but it's a meeting in 1948 of the beginning of a field. And so I guess what I'm asking is here, what do we see here? And of course, the answer is a bunch of geeky looking guys. I mean, we couldn't be more geeky were. You know, I wish we could really see closely because like this guy, I just laugh at him. You know, and this guy looks better than you. The biggest forehead you've ever seen in your life, you know, it's kind of that. Fred Keller, who you probably don't know unless you're a behavior analyst, but he's probably the most dapper looking guy there, I think so. Anyway, so what do you see here? But what don't you see? What's not apparent? Women or people of color, right? Why? Well, 1948, professional field. You know, we've come a long way since 48. Have we come far enough? No, not far enough, but we've come some ways. The experimental analysis began, the behavior analysis began in a less than diverse way. But of course, but say here also, but to be fair, that's not unusual for the time. We need to move forward and keep moving forward. So what are we up to now? Here's a graph you can see that this is all the BCBAs in the United States as of this year. It's about 62,000 in the United States, which is sounds like a big number. You could triple that number and still have not enough. That's how it's sort of a good time to be a BCBA. Very much all four school systems, human services involved. So, but anyway, 62,000. Well, who are they? And you certainly won't be able to see this. Gosh, you can see this better, but BCBAs by June. First things I'm going to show you this big old patch with your names. It's a thing. BCBAs put you know that it's 80 something percent. It's like 86% now. Which there's some good things about that. The slide I showed you a moment ago is the beginning of the Society for the Experimental Analysis, all men, you know, all geeky men and all white men. So by gender, here you have by ethnic classification. Now this is where we're getting to talk about diversity. It is all white. 59% of BCBAs are white currently. Black, 4.29. Asian, 7.39. Hispanic, 11.04. Yeah. In the America today, whites are 59.3. They're like 60 and 10% higher expression, if you will, in BCBAs. In America, 18.9 Hispanic, 12.6 Black. Those numbers are great and reduced to go back to the BCBAs. But to do that, this was, let's say, the board Hispanics, 11%, it's like 7% differential, and for Blacks, about 70% differential there too. So there's quite a bit of room for improvement there. And that's part of the story. So let me just say, so who am I? What am I doing talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging? As some of you know me, actually it's only Jeff, but kind of I've met several of you now. Don't ask me to remember your names because I never remember names. So I'm an associate professor practicing director of the doctoral program at Simmons in behavior analysis. I have all those letters after my name. My wife says it all my alphabet, she said. You might not have noticed, but I'm white. I'm like, I go in the sun, I turn like a lobster immediately. I'm from Northern European descent. My son had a ancestry.com thing done. How much that cost, but turns out they can tell you what your parents were.
And he tells me that his father, as me, would be about 99% British. Hey, I'm part of the conquerors of the world or whatever, you know, the puppets and tea and all that sort of thing. I'm, in terms of where I am, currently, my family background is largely from the southern US, Alabama and Florida. Have you ever been to Alabama? Mhm. Okay, yeehaw, you know, okay, next week been to Alabama. It is the deep south. And in my lifetime, I've been there a ton where my father was from, and it's changed tremendously and still has a long ways to go. But if you can think of Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Alabama, Georgia, all of it. Oh, and Florida too. Yeah. Oh God, Florida's. I'm from Florida. I mean, I was born in Florida, and it's a pretty kooky looking place now. I was brought up in the Southern Baptist fundamentalist religion. My father was a deacon in the Baptist church. As I work here, I don't go in for that sort of thing anymore, but you know, that was me growing up. I had to learn all about that stuff. So, and I know you can't tell, but I'm getting old. And so I say I could fit right into that picture from 1948, almost. That picture was taking place about 6 years before I was born. So what qualifies me, of all people, to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, so forth? Maybe, you know, it'd be better to hear from somebody who suffers from diversity issues, who are from being part of minority populations who haven't had the privilege that folks like me have had. On the other hand, I'm the folks that change. I'm the folks who, you know, being British, genetically speaking, folks who need to change. I'm the ones who have set up a world of privilege for white people. I say as if I was doing that. People long before me. When I changed, the world would be more diverse. When my population changes, that's what I guess I'm trying to say. And so I've been on this journey. I've been tuned in. Simmons is a good place for that, by the way. It's very much a liberal arts school in Boston, and very much tuned in to issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So what is diversity? Well, the first demographics of the workplace, or your church, or your school, town, any organization, your occupation, of which include your ethnicity, your gender identification, sexual orientation, age, nationality, disability, status, and other factors. I throw in here, talk about neurodiversity. It's a new topic for us, right? That people are diverse based upon their physiology, by their brain structure, by the way their nervous systems work. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Equity refers to giving each individual fair and equal access to opportunities and advancements, regardless of who they are, where they're from, and all those characteristics we just talked about. Inclusion ensures everyone on the team is treated fairly and respectfully. You could have equity, you could have access, but not be treated respectfully, not having being embraced by the other people sitting at the table. And then finally, to sort of include all these, and the term belonging refers to how an individual feels being accepted, if they feel accepted, feeling that they feeling to be included. Every team member, everybody at the table should feel that their perspective is valued by the other people and add something useful. And of course, it does. It always would have. It just wasn't always included, right? So the neurodiversity, just to spend a moment on that. Until I started looking into it, I didn't know about Susan Simmons. He was a sociologist in the 90s talking about neurodiversity. She herself is someone on the spectrum. And so she advocated for the idea that the autistic brain simply works differently. I added, not better, always, from the non-autistic brains. The, I had never heard of her, before, but now we're hearing a lot about neurodiversity. The concept that suggests the brain imaging and so forth, that folks on the spectrum, and you know, you'll hear me when I'm saying, I'll say, oh, a person with autism or the autistic person. I've had to go back and forth in that. When I first started in the field, 1,000 years ago, we used to say an autistic. The person has autism, they're autistic. Yeah, because no, you don't say that. The person with autism. And after a while, I learned to say that. Yeah. Now it's back the other way. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know it's funny. Jeff and I both work in the field of brain injury also, and learned to say a person we would never say brain injury individual, or we'd say a person with brain injury. So that's not my brain injury is the thing that happened to me. It's not who I am. But now the folks who advocate for folks on the spectrum say it is who I am. You know, this is how my brain works, and it's okay. You know, so that's where we are with neurodiversity. So the term neurodiversity has come to include not just autism, but other neurological conditions. Right? So brain injury, I suppose. What else would we lump in there that really stands out as a group that is looking for recognition as being different but equal, so to speak. But anybody that with different mental health issues, people with depression, people with schizophrenia, people with all that are diverse, and we need to understand that it's thinking differently, not necessarily worse, better, but differently. So just to hit up that same point, this position says these differences should be celebrated rather than being feared. Also, and most importantly to what we do, is that helps children cultivate self-esteem. It suggests, it's on my next slide, that really what we're talking about is our council that folks like us can prepare students to improve their lives as neurodivergent people, as opposed to looking for a cure or a solution. You know, are we going to get rid of autism with our work, or are we going to build skills? Are we going to help them just like we help other youngsters, let's say, in regular education, be prepared to be integrated into the community on their own, you know, by their own value? We want to do that for folks with autism, but not to change the nature of their functioning and their way their brains work. Another thing here. So in behavior analysis, I asked the question is, how is neurodiversity playing out in the behavior analytic world? We've had a fairly large behavior analysis, have had a fairly large role to play in autism. We have changed a lot of the educational practices and so forth. See the street trial learning, you see you know, Lobos methods, verbal behavior methods, and so forth. That is pushback because some of the practices in behavior analysis pushback specifically around behavior analysis. Some, I think, like any science, some that we learn. I mean, we might do something different, but we didn't always do that. And some, you don't know what to say about it. But, anyway, it's a big issue. One of the big issues, for example, is people with stereotypy. When I was first treating folks, it was a big thing to try to tamp that down, get that under control, got in the way of adaptive learning. And maybe it does sometimes. On the other hand, maybe it's also a behavior that helps individuals individuals with autism, autistic individuals, regulate their emotional conditions. Maybe look, Um, so we haven't quite worked out what to do with that. One of the things that we were talking about earlier is that our goals now are, rather than to get rid of stereotypy, it's just to bring it under time and place, you know, when's it take time to do this? I'm gonna take a really bad example, but I'll get it back. Um, masturbation is not okay to do in public. Certainly, okay, that you don't want to remove it from somebody's repertoire. Nothing, time and place, right? It's probably time and place things in the world. And that's just another, but we're still wrestling with all that. But anyway, neurodiversity, we could do a whole couple hours on neurodiversity. But so what does behavior analysis said about diversity in general? Well, the Association for Behavior Analysis, which is meeting starting Saturday, or actually starting tomorrow, right? Definitely, they're giving a long talk about some other strange topics, but at a workshop. It's here in Denver, goes all around. The association said, we seek to be an organization comprised of people of different ages, races, nationalities, ethnic groups, sexual orientation, standards, classes, under the codes, discrimination. Unfair discrimination is opposed to fair, but anyway, opposed discrimination. Okay, that's 2012. Not many people were talking neurodiversity at the time, as I say here. But I want to point out that, you know, when you read that statement, who would disagree with that? You know, it sounds, oh, yeah, the American way, but is it? You know, I don't think so, or it hasn't been universally so, but we say it is. Everybody liked the pursuit of happiness, all that, except so we would adopt that, but we haven't always played it out in terms of our practices. One of the things that we do, just like all other fields do, is we do assessments, evaluations, we treat that first. And what we need to always remember, and we say we remember it, right? You know, when you do assessment, evaluation, agreement, set goals and so forth, we need to use language and develop relationships with our clientele and the stakeholders around it, like there's our families, and so forth. Those folks that serves the, you know, to give us information, but really to develop service deliveries that they find important, that are significant to them. We say applied behavior analysis is actually supporting socially significant behaviors. And who knows better what's socially significant than the individual, their families, their stakeholders, and so forth, rather than behavior analysis. Rather than their tutors, rather than speech language pathology. Not that we don't have some good ideas, but we're not the people buying the service. So we need to take all of their approaches into account. When we work with people in different groups, earlier today when I was doing the same talk, I was saying, I go to work with a family with let's say a youngster, but with their family, their age. What do I know? What they behavior analysts would obtain the training, the experience, the consultation, or supervision necessary to ensure confidence in my services. What's going to make me tailor my services appropriate to an Asian family, an Asian culture, what their goals are, what's important to them, what scares them, you know, about them. But I'm appreciative and I'm not sensitive to it. So how many of us work with individuals, groups, families, with diversity characteristics different than our own? I don't think all of us, right? Have you been trained? I don't. I mean, I've done some training on my own. I've got a lot of experience. But that doesn't make me, I could work with a family all the time. I think they always would, and I know that's kind of the video. Trust me. And so we have to think about how to approach the job differently. Not that I'm the expert, but that I provide services that can be used to work with goals with your child, with your family, with your whatever, and use their direction to tailor my services. How successful can you be without that preparation? One thing about behavior analysis, and I assume it's true for everybody, I'm not going to be there the rest of their lives. Okay? I'm going to be there for a little bit of time, but mostly I'm going to help train. I'm going to do some work, and you guys do hear something that's longer term. But right now I'm working with adults, for example. Let's say I work with an adult with autism. Why not go in and develop some thoughts and maybe even do this? I'm going to train the family members or a group home staff, and they're going to carry out what I think. How much buy-in do I get from the family if I'm not listening and fulfilling their goals, not my goals? That's the whole part of who's in charge of the work we do. Behavior has to say Skinner says there's 3 kinds of selection. There's natural selection, there's evolution. Selection of operating behavior, that's a teaching that we all do for our kiddos, with the adults and I work with, and there's cultural selection in the world. A lot of things, tons of things, are passed on generation to generation, like how you cook, how you're religious, what kind of education, there's lots going on from generation to generation. All the traditions that have to do with there's an Asian family, that this is a Southern white family, all the different. So if we don't appreciate culture, we can't help that much. We're going to be limited in terms of the effects that we're going to have. I was saying this morning, why do I talk here this particular article? Why do I talk about it? So plug my pals in here. But this is about behavior analysts. What kind of training do they get? What do they think is important about culturally competent care? And so, just as a background, the Census Bureau predicts that by 2044, the United States will become a majority minority nation. Because that means that the biggest chunk of folks are not. The most, anyone in particular, white, black, it'll be minorities that are the biggest chunk. And for white rural Americans, no one would be abroad. They sort of pass for a while, but I mean, in many ways, early parts of our country, I'm not sure who was in the majority, maybe not us, it was white, but it's come to be that way, and it's rapidly fading. So it's the diversity of children in the United States, and that's changing even faster. Actually, in the year 2020, we look at that. Children now are, in other words, there are white children, if you will, make up not the majority of children. It's a more diverse group. The diverse population are the majority, not the white. And that's going to continue to happen. By 2060, 1 in 5 individuals in our country will have been born someplace else. I mean, it is what we say our country is based upon. Right? We are a nation of immigrants. That we are a nation of immigrants. That we need to be together about all that. So, I say here, I return to this article. Sure, one of my students. So I'm going to maybe skip over this, but just to say that culture is critical to what we do. And one of the things that's most important is culturally competent to provide services.
Another one of my students said, well, it's probably loose. You know, who can be confident in somebody else's culture? We can be aware, oh yes. And it's a different affair in my way of point of view. And I need to understand my own culture, values, preferences, characteristics, in order to think about how I'm related to somebody else's practice, culture, something like that. Most of this, I don't do a lot of self-analysis. Everybody thinks, if you will, that their culture is the right one. Everybody thinks that their ideas are the best, right? And so forth. Well, we need to get a lot more neutral about that, and be open to others and their ideas. We need to be more culturally aware. They're not going to be culturally competent. I mean, let's say I become competent in working, sort of competent with an Asian family, but then the next family is, I don't know, you fill in whatever blank there. So, better to be culturally humble and have cultural humility in order to just say, oh yeah, we all have different ideas. Tell me about yours. Tell me what's important to you. Tell me what's important to your family. What do you hope? What are your dreams for your child? How should we begin? You know? And every time I swerve from something you think's working, let me know. We'll fix that. We'll work. I'll do my best. Consider this example from one article by Stein et al. In 2016. This is, again, changing the behavior analysis, but let's consider the following example. The child is referred to a functional assessment for withdrawn behavior. And here withdrawn, what's another word that we substitute for depression? Maybe take something, or China time, or we could fit something else in. The behavior analyst and special educator observed the student, and they observed that the child became withdrawn after receiving verbal praise. Most of this, verbal praise is, quote, reinforcement, right? But not for this kid. In fact, the student ultimately stopped engaging in any behavior led to verbal praise. What to do about that? You sort of built around praise and good behavior. What can you do about it? Where would it lead you? It's a little bit of a quandary for any of us. Imagine if, yeah, what you use on the children before, what services do you provide?
Oh, it was API, but, OT is.
Okay.
And we have my notes.
Any of us. You know, we praise good behavior, right? We try to engage the child, praise. But what do we do if they, you know, praise is not a good thing? And how many you have kids praise is either aversive? I mean, if you haven't either it's aversive, sometimes that happens.
Now,
Yeah, that, and you know, depending on the stimulus, the sensory aspects of it. I used to work with a brain injury guy. I think I was mentioning that this morning. And I would do a little work with simple math facts because part of trying to build my mind. Say, what's going on? And he would do something like, oh, 6 + 1. And he'd write 7. Oh, good job. He was wheelchair mobile, and so he'd stand up halfway out of his thing and scream at the top of his lungs, no. No, I got no queries. I can't say. And all I could do, which turned out to be reinforcement, we just go to the next problem. I just wouldn't notice because I assumed it was very verbal. That he'd already learned all this stuff, obviously. And the trouble with brain injury is he wrapped his Mustang in a telephone pole, you know, and it happened to any of us. My joke this one was Jeff joke, you know, anything could have happened to me, you know. What we make I don't want to make everyone paranoid, but you know, wear your seatbelts. Airbags in the front, not keeping avoid airbags, but the brain injury, any of us could happen in kind of a split second. and a wink of an eye, is never they say in Brandon do all the time. The world goes from okay. they're Providing, having those kind of services. I'm trying- But all of us in the school, we all did basic math. I'd like to keep in front of that again, because you've already been there. You remember being, that's what babies do, is what a lot of adults with brain injury would say. And it's pretty hard to convince them that they need to work on it. They have to be sensitive to such an idea. Maybe sleep up.
I was just reading, wait, how old was it?
Years, late 20s.
Wonder, too, if that was just a reminder of kind of the mistake we made that we to the wheelchair.
Oh.
In the angry of like. I wonder if we saw that like, well, 5-year-old can do this, you know, versus, you know, we're just gonna move on.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to, I mean, all this stuff. And together. I don't know. Go on about brain injury. Sometimes work with folks with final word, maybe somebody. We don't talk about this morning. And they have a flat after. Maybe that's even big for them, given what's happening, because. You know, I don't know, the folks I've worked with before, like, this happened to me, I don't know if I could get out of bed, you know? How do you like start life over again, like, a lot of physical challenges, a lot of mental, behavioral challenges? Yes, it would be just, maybe, you know, a lot of substance abuse problems, brain injury, talk to their mouth, you know? I think that might be a solution I'd be checking out, you know, and but anyway, you know, we like to think about who the person is that we're looking at, and of course we do, you know, but. So, just to move on, while collaborating with his family, the person who wouldn't accept praise, or, you know, wouldn't be drawn to that. Turns out, in their culture, the individual is not supposed to accept or, you know, be given individual attention. It's the community. It's the family. It's important. So we have to think, here's how do we turn individual praise, which we teach everybody all the time. They did a good job doing this part of work. No, don't do that. And maybe something, and this was not in the article, but maybe it said, oh, you make the community proud. You know, you make all of us proud. And try to keep it that way. Maybe that would be reinforcing. And of course, the only way we'd know is by trying it. Okay. So history, people's history, their it says operant, that's behavior analysis talk, but their learning history and their cultural history matters. Their history matters, our history matters, and how we work. I'll have to read this to you because it's completely invisible unless you were up here. So I use this whenever I teach items. A 30-year-old mother of two comes to a marriage counselor, claiming that her husband is insensitive to her needs. He describes her husband as British and somewhat chauvinist. He states that while he's a good provider, he was not really supportive to her returning to school and developing a career. He believes that preparing for a career at this time would be too expensive and bad for the children. In discussing their sexual relations, the woman finds that her husband has low sex drive and is inattentive to her needs, but not very creative. Now here's a bunch of different therapists we could see. One is a female therapist who recently divorced her husband, returned to school, and completed their degree. Or you might see his male therapist who comes from a traditional family and who himself has a stay-at-home wife and 2 children. Or maybe a male therapist who's married, who is currently having financial difficulties. Or a therapist who came from a broken home in which the divorce process was very drawn out. A therapist who's been without an mentioned partner for over 2 weeks. I asked my class, do you think therapy is received the same with each of these folks? Not this, right? I mean, what I always tell people, I mean, we're all in the helping profession. But we all walk in the door with individual history, what social workers call family of origin, opinion. So you know, we have our own reinforcers, the aversive stimuli, that if we're not careful, you know, this whole transference issues can be going on about what to be thinking about that. Our history is determining how we act. I was giving this example today that I was hearing you talk about behavior analysis in India. And someone was saying, well, you know, if you're in India, and you have a child, let's say a child in the spectrum who engages in self-induced behavior, stereotypy, maybe aggression, and lots of lifestyle deficits. And if they would have start, maybe self-injury, I'm gonna worry about that first because. And then the families might say, no, no, it's stereotype. It's that. It's too stigmatized. They wouldn't go and, you know, help the community it would be hurtful to the family for people to see my child engaged in that kind of behavior. You want to say, okay, how about that? Stereotype number one. So you have to be open to hearing all of that. That's tough for behavior analysis taught in school. Self-injury, followed by aggression, followed by life skill deficits, you know, on a scale, you know, not that you couldn't work on a couple things together, but nevertheless, working with stereotypes. So in our culture, we're hearing more about neurodiversity there, stereotypes, bad, where you say, what your perspective is. But it's the family who should be making the choices. If you're a behavior analyst, you would know who Montrose Wolf is. He's one of the authors of the premier first ABA type defining article in '68 about what are the dimensions of applied behavior analysis. And what's that? There you go. Yeah, that's it. Montrose Wolf. Not only did he participate in that, but he gave us the term social validity for behavior analysis. And when I was, I don't know, when I was, I was working in an animal laboratory at the time, so we didn't talk a lot about social validity. I had to become working in ABA before we really focused on that. Well, Monty, as people would say, defined it. He said it has three dimensions. One is the social significance of the goal. Are these goals appropriate and meaningful for the client or stakeholder? That's what they think we should be working. I have to say, and we'll never say inside of a professional treatment facility, but who picks our goals? So we have clients. Well, we do, I guess, but part of it comes down to what do you build? What can you build? I don't, you know, I exist in some world, so I'm not going to be any critical of that. Gosh, really, the insurance people are going to tell us what's the best goal? Montrose back in '74 didn't even imagine the ABA that had, you know, paid for by insurance back in those days. But you know, it shapes our behavior. We have to be careful. It's the client, it's the stakeholders, it's the community, if you will, and us as professionals on like how do you get there? How do you get to those goals, maybe? But then we talk about ABA being around social significance. Who better to know about social significance? The family? From insurance company. But money talks, right? And if we don't take care of money, obviously, in a facility like this, well, we don't run business and nobody gets help. Well, yeah, it's big things. Here's another dimension. The social appropriateness, acceptability, I'll say something. Sorry. I could teach appropriate math years. Thinking I want to show it, and then I punish it. Nobody really works out what happens, but I could. Nobody would accept such truth, right? So it would not be acceptable to maybe for some folks today, the street child training not acceptable, has to be natural environment. So, well, we talk about all that. And so we have to do things that are acceptable to the client, acceptable to the stakeholders. And finally, the social importance of the results. Well, what results? Goodness. If we're working on something, are we doing it right? You know, are we making a difference? I was using the example that somebody in graduate school, one of my professors said, if this client is hitting themselves 100 times an hour, and I put together a program that absolutely statistically reduces it to 95 times an hour, is that socially significant or culturally significant? I mean, clinically significant? No, it's not. I mean, it's a real fact. It's statistically speaking. But it's not a good one. You know, that's, you know, somebody should fire them because that's the good results of it. So these three things together, how to define, is this socially valid? So how might one's culture, ethnicity, education, religious beliefs, neurological impact the answer to these questions? Well, a lot. They, again, if the social significance is wrong, maybe if you believe that you're in India, well, it's very accurate. Is it a bad? Religious beliefs. I have a family I'm working with now whose daughter is terribly floored. Needs medication. And then we could work with it. But they don't want to say she has a thought disorder. They don't want to say she's just upset. That's what they say. And I reached at one point, she's having a very good time in the world, but clearly anybody and others, folks, other evaluations, which the families rejected, they think that just between God and, you know, some sort of thought therapy, the psychosis was over. And, you know, we kind of work with them a little bit. But, you know, it's a real tough because we think, oh, this makes life a lot better quickly to do this. And so right now we're sort of on an impasse. And again, we're not going to tell them they have to do anything, but you know, that's our professional opinion. And we try to talk about, well, you know, God, not my belief system, but it's 5 minutes. Oh, we're almost done. So I'm going to jump ahead here and go, what do we do? Getting back to this article, they did at the completion of the article, the one with my student, and it asked a whole bunch of questions like, hey, you think working with different families and competencies and cultural humility, is that good? Is that important? Everybody said, yeah. And how comfortable are you? The survey would say, we're working together. Oh, I'm pretty comfortable. Well, how much training do you have on that? And everybody would say essentially, well, we're adding more and more. They say some we just added additional classes and diversity. Some addition, good enough. Not a whole lot of stuff needs to be done. But you know, we're moving in the right direction. But so we have a whole field that says, oh, it's really important. Well, what do you know about it? Well, we're not really anything, you know, and so that's where we're at, kind of. So some things that might help us behavior analysis wise. Yeah, I'm leaving out a lot of slides. And I'm getting to my recommendations. So clearly the most important thing, and you can't read them all, so I need to. But more people in different diversity, different countries, different backgrounds, we can begin behavior analysis. Not, I think I was saying about 7-8% away from the representing the culture of bars. So what do we do with that? I think we have to give people do college education. We have a couple of programs that some of the so we think just in here. But it was in here, but the facility takes and then we get a master degree in the master further to the video and special education. So that's a good deal. Let me say that I like sending a lot. But sending is tremendously expensive. It's really like, really expensive. But if somebody else was paying for it, maybe we could have a lot more people who wouldn't be able to carry and we could increase and do that. And so if I had a family that was Asian, it'd be nice. We could run the BCBA. It sounds like that's some sort of segregation. I don't mean, I want to give them somebody who knows and has sensitivity for what they need. I want to give them the availability to. We should allow families, well, we do assessments. Our assessments should make us ask the right kind of questions. We do lots of questions, obviously, about under the assessment. Some of them should be like, well, if your child and your family be like, I'm thinking of male or female parents. Yeah, something. That's it, yeah.
In an old job, so we were like, we're not switch families environment. But in my old job, that was on the
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm happy, I mean, there's. Is it always necessary? But certainly. Lots of circumstances. And then, how do you want to be taught? What kind of communication is best with your family? Is praise okay? Should I say good job there, or is that not okay? And, how do you, want to, address you, talk to you, and how long, all the different kinds of things. Should be all those questions should be in there, not tell me about this behavior, that behavior. I mean, those things should be there too. But let's get something about the way the family functions and what the reinforces, what the significant change that they're looking for. So that drives our relationship. So they, they're on the same team. And when I leave them, it's significantly driven to some completely change that. Treatment material outside of the clinical. So, same thing with the true for programs, things like that. Even more diverse. We have some, we're more than used to, we don't look like that first slide. But, we need a lot of that. And, well, I'll leave it at that, except that we should talk about these things all the time. Every time we talk about a family, every time we talk about it, we should be discussing what are their beliefs, what are our beliefs. Had to work on transference issues a lot, so that you guys know what those terms mean. I had one of my talk therapists that I supervise for meetings. And he read all about that in school. And so transference is never an issue for him. And that's like saying, I'm not human anymore. I don't do anything. I don't believe that. I'm not responsive to my environment. And so we're all transference folks. But anyway, it's a long journey. It's one behavior analysis has been behind it. Because, likely we have an effective technology for changing behavior, but not always for establishing therapeutic alliances. And we need to work on that a little bit more. A lot more, just to be honest about that. And it's a diverse world and getting more diverse. Good. That's a good thing. One day, it'll be great if no one had any reason to say these words, diverse, what do you mean? I mean, anyway, we got a lot more to do. Right? Any questions? I ended quickly, whatever. We just need to be more sensitive and humble about our own brain. Who's right? We're all, and we just have to make choices and talk a lot about things. All right. I'll let you go. I don't want to keep you too long. Are we time right? Great. Okay. Thank you. Thanks. The very first class I ever taught.